my name is Bree and today I am filming my very first YouTube channel ever. First video. Wow. I've been thinking about this for a few years and I finally did it. That was my dog yawning. Arwen, you doing okay? Okay, back to this. So today, because it is my very first video, I decided to do something that would kind of let you get to know me and also help me practice filming videos and not looking at the viewfinder, because that is actually really hard. There are 10 questions that I will be going over on today's video, and they are all about this BookTube channel because I do plan on primarily doing book-related content. Maybe every once in a while I'll do makeup. I'm still learning how to do makeup, so it would be more of a how not to do makeup probably. Okay, question number 1. Why did you start this channel? So I've been watching BookTube since I started my undergraduate degree in oh gosh, I'm getting older. 2013 was when I started college, and I moved to a new place, Montana. I'd never lived there, didn't know anybody that lived there, didn't have any family there. I was making friends, but nobody really read books as much as I did, or the same kind of books, so I ended up trying to talk to random people about all of these crazy books I loved, and they weren't quite understanding things
like book boyfriends, theories about next things happening in the books, anything. I just wanted to talk about how much I loved the different characters, how much I wish I lived in these crazy fantasy worlds that I was always reading. They looked at me like I was a little bit crazy.
So aside from that, I self-published a book back then too, probably around the time I graduated, so that would have been 2015. It was a fantasy YA book called Bleeding Heart. It had vampires and werewolves because those are some of my favorite things. But I wanted to start a BookTube channel back then, so 3 years ago. I was really nervous because I am super shy. I was scared to get in front of a camera. I didn't know how to do makeup, and I feel like you had to be able to do that to put something on YouTube. So I was really nervous, and I just put it off. But I did start a blog, so if you go down to the description box, I have it linked. It's called Adventures in Obsessive Reading is my book blog, and I've been putting up book reviews and hauls and books I'm excited about for 3 years now. So since then, and finally, 24 now, I'm done with college, I got my master's degree, moving into the professional world, and I decided stop being a chicken, just go for it. So here I am filming this video, super nervous. Okay, number 2, second question, what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to the BookTube community? So aside from I'm really nerdy and I tend to read the things I studied in college. So just for some background here, my bachelor's degree was in anthropology. I have a certificate in forensic studies, and then my actual BA was in forensic anthropology. So I read a whole bunch of really random stuff for that. And I tend to still read like cultural studies and different things about like true crime or anything having to do with bones. So I bring some of that to my reading, and I'll talk about those kinds of books. And then my master's degree, and I started a PhD, but I chose to leave. So, but for that, I studied international security, political psychology, and international relations, which my main focus was on Russia, which means I'm going to be reading probably still quite a bit about Russian culture and Russian history. And I do study the language. I'm not as good as I used to be. I was at about an intermediate level when I was in high school and early college, and then I just didn't practice as much or read as much in it. So I let it go a little bit. I'm trying to relearn Russian. And aside from my nerdier books, nonfiction reads that I'll be doing, I tend to read a lot more adult books than I see talked about on BookTube usually. Like, some of my favorites are Elizabeth George's Inspector Lindley series. I started that one a couple months ago. I'm 5 books in. It's 20 books. I really am getting into adult books, and I like talking about them. And I like reading older books, like published previous century and older, and classics. And I don't just read YA, which I love YA, and I definitely will probably read at least a couple a month. But I also bring those other subjects in. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely keep watching my videos and you'll see some. Book question number 3, not book 3, question 3. Lordy, what are you most excited about for this channel? That would be getting to know other readers and just interacting with people that totally get when I'm like, oh my gosh, this character is so hot, and people look at you like, but you can't see book characters. And it's like, no, but you know. So getting to talk to people and comments back and forth and interacting with the reader community, I'm excited for that. I tried a couple book clubs, but everyone was either like really and totally different kinds of books, or they just wanted to socialize and not talk about books at all, and it didn't work. I tried really hard. But so I decided to just go for it and start BookTube. So here we are. Question number 4. Why do you love reading? Well, of course, everybody says escapism. I need a drink. Okay, so there's the escapism element. Like, if you're having a bad day, picking up a book is just, it's fantastic. You get to be somebody else, be somewhere else, do something else. You get to escape a little bit. But I also really like, because for all of my degrees, there was elements of psychology that I had to take, and I took the AP psychology class in high school. I really like getting inside people's heads. So when I'm reading a book and I can see how other people might see something or respond to something or something like that, I just love it. And seeing how it compares to how I see things, or like even just interacting with other readers and seeing how they interpreted something that I totally did not see coming at all. I just enjoy that. You get to be and see different things. Question number 5. What books or series got you into reading? So I have a couple of answers for this one, because with most readers I had like highs and lows where I read a lot, or I just read a little bit, or I was just learning to read, so I didn't read a ton. The 2 series there's 3 actually, when I was really little that just kept me reading, and finally, of course, Junie Jones, everybody's read those. And I really, really loved Hank the Cow Dog. I've already mentioned my dog. I've always loved dogs. They are my babies. I love dogs, so reading about them was fantastic. After that one, I had to look up this series because I remember reading the books, I remember the covers, I remember like the characters, but I could not remember the title at all of the series. So I have it written down here. It is The Adventures of the Bailey School Kids. So this series, I didn't realize it had about 40 books in it when I looked it up on Goodreads. It's about all these kids, and they're in elementary school, and they think like their teacher might be a vampire, or like the cafeteria lady might be Cupid, all of that sort of stuff. And it plays into, I really loved the fantasy element and the horror element, and it just kept me so engrossed the whole time I was reading. And that was my first true love with books, and I just remember sitting out at recess when I was little reading these things, and people looking at me like, well, you're not supposed to be reading on recess. I did all the time. So that was one of my first loves when it came to reading, was that series, and I just would run to the library, and I was so excited anytime I saw one I hadn't seen before, and I read them all very quickly. Now they're really hard to find in the bookstore. Like, I have never seen them in a bookstore, and even on Amazon they're hard to find past the first couple, because they were published in the early 90s, and then through to like 2006 I think is when the last one came out. And then of course, like most people, Twilight. I was 14 when I read the first book, so it had been out 4 years at that point. It came out in 2004, so yeah, about 4 years. I only had to wait about a week for Breaking Dawn to come out, from the time of starting Twilight to getting through Eclipse. And I kept hearing people really loved this book around 6th grade, and people kept telling me, hey, you know, you really remind me of Bella. I didn't know what that meant, of course, and then I just kept watching, and I was like, okay, everybody's reading this, maybe I should pick it up. It has vampires, I love vampires, okay, I'll do it. So I'm reading and totally creeped myself out at 14, because Bella's from the same place I am, parents live in the same places, our moms have the same name, we had the same physical description, same occupations for her parent. It was just really, there was too much similar, and it creeped me out, but I kept reading, because once you connect with a character like that, it's hard to not read it, because then you can put yourself in her shoes more. And I know people hate Twilight and love ragging on it, but it's still that book that got me into the YA genre and got me to keep reading as a teenager, because I was starting to kind of slow down a little bit. I hadn't read a book I really loved lately. And that one just kind of, I was obsessed. I had the posters, I went to all the movies, like at the midnight premiere. I loved it. I still have. I think it might be in my storage unit. One year for Christmas, I got like the jewelry, so I have like a choker, a bracelet, the ring for the Cullens. Yeah, I was that nerdy. Signed pictures. I loved Twilight. So, and from there I moved on to Vampire Academy, which I also just was completely obsessed with, loved it. If you haven't noticed the theme, I really like vampires. I still do. I'm actually currently reading Interview with a Vampire, which I'm shocked I hadn't read yet. I'm 24, love vampires, and I'm just now reading that book. So those are the books that really got me like hooked into reading at different points in my life, whether I was a little kid or kind of growing up. And so next question, what questions, number 6, would you ask your favorite booktubers? So I watched quite a bit of BookTube. I started watching it around 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. I watched Pulling Bananas books, Catty-tastic, Hardback Hoarder, Books with Chloe, Pierre Ford, Little Book Owl, all of those, and tons more. My Reading is Odd. I just started watching. I'm constantly watching BookTube. I would probably ask them, how do you find the time to do the filming and the reading and all of that? Because that's something I'm going to have to learn how to do. And how do you project such confidence in your videos? Like, they just seem so confident. Number 7, what challenges starting a BookTube channel do you think will be the hardest to overcome? So I think I mentioned this already. I'm really shy. When I'm out in public, I don't really talk to a whole lot of people. I've gotten much better. At my first job, I was a customer service representative at a bowling alley. You had to say hi to everyone. You had to be really friendly. And then most recently I lived in a really small town of like less than 1,000 people, and you had to say hi to everyone. And these things all started breaking me out of my shell a little bit, but still pretty shy. If I'm not at work or like doing schoolwork or something like that, I'm still very shy and reserved. And that's gonna be the hardest thing, is when I'm not home alone like right now, and I have like roommates home, or there's people around me, or if I try and vlog, overcoming that apprehension and trying to stay normal and not freak out, that's gonna be tough for me because I get so uncomfortable and embarrassed. Question number 8, when did you start reading? So I kind of already mentioned this. I started reading, I'm not sure if it means like when did you learn to read, which I was probably about 7 when I was, but the first time I like started really trying to read was probably 2nd grade. I was 6 turning 7, somewhere in there, and I had gotten the Scholastics catalog that they send home before the book fair comes to your school. So I got that, and I used to just circle all the books I wanted, because even before I could read, I was obsessed with physical books. I just loved having them. And I would give the list to my mom, she would order them for me, and then the day that they would bring those bags to class and they'd give you the books, I miss being in elementary school just for that. So I circled I still have it right here, the box set of the first 4 Harry Potter books, the others right here, and I was so excited. I couldn't read them though. I was probably a little too young and not good enough at reading yet to pick them up on my own. So I used to go to my grandma's house after school, and I convinced her to try and read the first one to me. My grandma, she doesn't read for fun at all. So I bring her this book, and she's trying to read all these crazy names and all these spells, and I just remember her looking at me like, you're crazy, you know that, right? And so this was my very first copy of Harry Potter. I have a few more now, the illustrated copy. I have the Russian edition of, I think, the 3rd one. I have the UK edition of this one. I collect them now. So this was my first copy, and I still have inside the piece of paper that she gave me as a bookmark to keep track. We only ended up reading about 2 of the chapters before we gave up, but yeah, so this is probably the book that made me want to learn to read, because I just needed to know what happened. And the funny thing is, I ended up not reading these in order at all. The first one I ended up finishing all on my own. Probably was about a year or 2 later, I picked up Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So I read the 3rd one first, and then my 4th grade class read the 4th book. That my teacher read it out loud to us, favorite teacher ever. And Finished that one next. So I read 3, 4, then I went back to 2, and then I read the first one. I know, that's not how you're supposed to read them, but I did reread the whole series last year. So when I was 23, I finally reread the whole series. So I reread the whole series audiobook on my 2-hour commute to and from school. It was fantastic. Absolutely recommend it. Where do you read? I read in this chair, I read in bed, and also I love reading. I have my 15-minute breaks, 30-minute lunch at work. I read there every single day. I read as much as I can in that spot. And that's where I get a lot of reading done, honestly, especially since you don't want to work through lunch. So I make myself stop, put my work down, take a break, do my reading. Question 10, final question. What kinds of books do you like to read? I think I've already kind of gone over this. So fantasy, YA, history, social studies, mystery. Love mystery books so much. Those are some of my absolute favorites to work through, and I don't read a whole lot of contemporary. I would like to start reading that though, because everyone seems to love it. But yeah, those are some of my favorite things. Hope you got to know me a little bit better, and I hope you come back and watch more of my videos. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.